Estamos en vivo.
Ok, acuérdate de grabar. Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es María Martí, soy presidente del Ayn Rand Center para América Latina y les doy la bienvenida a este nuevo webinario que está organizando el Ayn Rand Latinoamérica junto al Ayn Rand Institute. Espera que no me pasa, a ver, ahí está. Los webinarios que organiza el Ayn Rand Center son en principio los martes a las 6 de la tarde, hora argentina, y la semana que viene vamos a tener un webinario en español con Roberto Kachanowski, economista, que va a tratar el tema de por qué Argentina está yendo rumbo a lo que ha sucedido en la rebelión de Atlas. Así que va a ser un webinario muy picante, muy divertido y al mismo tiempo un análisis muy profundo de lo que está ocurriendo en Argentina y si tenemos alguna chance de salir de esta crisis en la que estamos viviendo. De todas maneras, yo creo que es muy útil para toda América Latina porque lo que ocurre en Argentina es bastante similar a lo que ocurre en los demás países de América Latina. Para los que siempre nos acompañan ya lo saben, pero para aquellos que no, les pedimos que nos acompañen que visiten nuestro sitio web, el aynrandlatam.org, para aquellos que quieren recibir información, actividades y contenido valioso del Ayn Rand Center pueden suscribirse a nuestro newsletter mensual, el Rand Express, que pueden suscribirse a través justamente de la página, van a encontrar debajo de la página un botón que dice suscribirse, y nos pueden seguir en social media, en la fanpage del Ayn Rand Center Latinoamérica en Facebook, tenemos un grupo de discusión también, el Ayn Rand Latinoamérica, y en Instagram y en Twitter como Ayn Rand Latam. También todos estos videos, estos webinarios que hacemos, los grabamos a través de Zoom, y luego los subimos en el YouTube de Ayn Rand Latam, también, y en el Facebook. También los invitamos siempre a bajar la aplicación del Ayn Rand Institute, la Ayn Rand University, con miles de cursos y horas de filosofía y de objetivismo. La buena noticia es que esto de a poquito se ve traduciendo también al español, así que van a encontrar también el material en otro idioma que no sea en inglés, así que eso es una gran noticia. Mi recomendación de siempre es, siempre vayan a las fuentes, vuelvan a Ayn Rand, que tiene una variedad de libros, tanto de ficción como no ficción, que vale la pena leer, así que si quieren seguir educando en filosofía y en objetivismo, vayan a Ayn Rand, que es lo mejor que van a encontrar. Si quieren contactarnos, tienen dudas, preguntas, sugerencias de webinarios, si quieren hacer algo en sus ciudades, algún tipo de conferencia o algún tipo de webinario o lo que fuera, nos pueden contactar a estos dos emails. Y ahora les quiero presentar, antes de presentarlo a nuestro orador, hay un poll que queremos hacer con Nixon. Nixon, no sé si lo tenés listo, para conocer un poco cuál es el target de cuál es nuestra audiencia. Por favor les pido que completen, que anoten con cuál de estos puntos se sienten identificados para conocer la familiaridad que tienen ustedes con las obras de Ayn Rand. Cinco segundos más. Bueno, muchas gracias. Bueno, el webinario de hoy tenemos el honor de contar con Tal Tsfany. El tema es un tema que Ayn Rand ha tratado en su libro Filosofía, quien la necesita, que es ¿qué puede hacer uno? Tal Tsfany es ingeniero industrial y máster en administración de empresas, es empresario, inversor y ejecutivo de negocios en el campo de la tecnología, es CEO y presidente del Ayn Rand Institute y es cofundador del Ayn Rand Center Israel. Y es el autor de un gran libro que se llama Sophie, que si tienen hijos, es para cualquiera, yo lo he disfrutado como loca, pero si tienen hijos en la adolescencia o en sus 20 años, les recomiendo este libro, que la buena noticia también es que pronto lo vamos a tener en español. Así que, sin más, les quiero dar la bienvenida. Tal Tsfany, thank you very much for being here with us. It's a pleasure, and you are the person who inspired me to open the Ayn Rand Center in Latin America, so I don't know, and you are really an inspiration. I'm so happy about it.
I couldn't be happier
that you're leading the center in Latin America, and we're going to do great things together, as we've done last year, but bigger and better.
For sure, for sure. Tal, what one can do? So the audience is all yours.
Great. So happy to see so many familiar names and unfamiliar names in the participant list. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Yeah, the question, when Maria asked me to do a webinar, I thought, like, what's going to be an interesting thing to talk about? And I decided to talk about something that really occupies my mind these days, with everything that is happening in the world with the coronavirus and the responses we've seen all over the world from governments. That is very disturbing, to say the least. And everything that is happening in the United States, if you're watching the news, with you know, racism and Black Lives Matter and all of that. And the response of a lot of people is, what can we do? You know, the world is going crazy around us, and I want to affect the world. I want to do something to change the world. And I have a lot of discussions with employees, with, you know, donors, and just friends about what can be done. And I find that a lot of people have this attitude towards this question that I had several years ago, until I read a very good article by Ayn Rand called "What Can One Do?" And I took so much out of it that I wanted to share with you what, you know, what could be learned. So let me share my screen. Here it is. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. So let's talk about this question. What can one do about the world? How can we fix the world? How can we change the world? Can we change the world? So your reaction is either, I'm going crazy, the world is going nuts on me, and I want to stop it. So the emotional response is frustration and rage against the craziness that is around us, and you want to shout and scream and pull the hairs that I don't have. I don't have hair, so I cannot pull it. But you know, the idea that really everything around you is collapsing. Most of the people around you have no clue in politics or anything that has to do with liberty. And a lot of people respond with just rage. Some people are just completely frustrated, and they have the opposite experience, which is, I'm done, I can't take it anymore. It's useless, the battle is lost. You know, we've lost to socialism, we've lost to communism, we've lost to altruism, whatever level you analyze what's going on around you. And by the way, I'm assuming that the audience is a little bit familiar with philosophy, so I'm going to talk in terms that I hopefully you will understand, but I'll be more than happy to get questions at the end. But a lot of people that I talk to are just completely frustrated. It's like the left is taking over our educational system, the universities, politics. You know, everything is collapsing, and it's getting worse and worse and worse in every day that goes by. So some people are really asking the question, okay, with all of that, what can actually be done? And I think the first step in solving a problem is understanding it, understanding the nature of the problem before you can even think about solutions. So what are we dealing with, right? What can one do? And the first question is, what can one do about what? You know, are we talking about changing the cultures, the culture in general, politics, ease regulations, improve education, free businesses, change the laws, privatize healthcare? What is the do mean? Because when I talk to people, it's just like, we need to change the world. It's like, change it how? What aspect of the world do you want to change? And that gives you the first clue about the nature of the problem. It's just a humongous problem. And in the lecture, or sorry, the article that Ayn Rand wrote about this topic, at the beginning she says right off the bat, you cannot change the world. No one person can change the world. And I'll talk more about what that means. So she gives, unbelievably relevant, but she gives an example of, think about you being a doctor in an epidemic. That's literally the example she uses in the article, if you read it. So let's say you're in the middle of an epidemic or a pandemic like we are right now, and you're a doctor. So what do you ask yourself? You ask yourself the question, how can I save millions of lives, eradicate COVID-19 out of existence and immune the entire world? Is that how you approach the problem of you applying yourself to fixing a problem? No, you wouldn't, right? The way you would think about it is like, I can help the number of people who are around me. I can take all of my time, my effort to the level of my interest and just save as many lives as I can around me, treat as many patients as I can around me, and just be as effective as I can with my time, with my limited resources to fix the problem, which is a humongous pandemic all over the world, but I cannot solve it on my own. So she asks the question, and she says, before she asks the question, she says, and assuming you believe that there are no miracles, right? Why are you, in a way, frightening yourself, paralyzing yourself with thinking about, I need to change the world, or the world needs to be changed, because there are no miracles. You cannot snap your finger and things will change. And there's no way for you to achieve any impossible goals or aspirations that you might set for yourself. It's a waste of time. And it creates a lot of anxiety and fear and, like I said, rage or hopelessness. If you think about things in the world of, miraculously, I'm going to change the world. So she says something very interesting. She says, think about how you approach everyday issues, everyday problems. You're very practical and you're very logical and rational about the way you approach those problems and then the solutions. I got a problem. I know what my resources are. What can I do about it? And I solve it. And she asks us to apply the same rigor that we apply in practical everyday life matters to the big philosophical questions of life. The same approach. The fact that we're asking big questions of how we can change the culture should not suddenly become a big issue that we can stop thinking about rationally. So if you apply the same rigor, very soon you will realize that I cannot save the culture. I cannot change Argentina, Mexico, Brazil, Guatemala, Peru, Ecuador. Not one person can. And it's true that you can become an influencer who helps direct things in the right direction. But even if you're the mega influencer, it takes several or many influencers for a prolonged period of time, decades and centuries, if you look at history, to change a culture truly. So if you apply the same rigor and the same approach to the big question that should be solved, how we change the culture, then suddenly you bring it down from the clouds to earth and you start analyzing and dissecting it. So I'm not avoiding the question. I'm going to answer the question, what can one do? But the first thing that Ayn Rand reminds us to do is to think about the big questions of life, the big philosophical questions in the same approach of practical and rational approach. So a lot of people say we need change, right? But what kind of change are we talking about? Every time we talk about we need to change the culture, most of the time what people refer to is political change. They're not talking about we need to change the psychology of the people around me to make them happier, which I think is very interesting, very challenging problem to solve. They're talking about the politics, how other people and what they want affects my life, my ability to live my life freely. So if we think about politics, what are we actually dealing with? So politics, if you think about it, is the tip of an iceberg. If you're focusing your life and your energy on what's going on Facebook or wherever you're consuming your news or ideas, and you're focusing on politics, you're focusing on the tip of the iceberg. But if you dig a little deeper, you will see that the whole world of politics is determined by a much deeper field of philosophy and moral ideas. That if you want to change a culture, you should not focus on politics. Politics is a result of philosophy and moral ideas. So if you want to treat a problem, you treat the cause, not the effect. So this is the kind of the first clue on how to even think about that problem. First, scope it out, understand what you're dealing with, what you should expect. And secondly, understand the nature of the problem, which is more philosophical rather than political. She has a really nice quote in that essay called What Can One Do? And she says, if you're fighting in politics, in the politics arena, it's like fighting with muskets, like with guns. If you're dealing with philosophy, you're dealing with a nuclear war. Because if you are able to change the philosophy of a culture, you can make a huge change. And if you look at history, in ancient Greece, what led to the Enlightenment and then to the political revolution of America, it was a complete shift in philosophy and moral ideas that led to that. So everything you see in the Renaissance, if you learn about what led to the philosophical revolution and the rediscovery of reason, it was all philosophical. It was the rediscovery of Aristotle. It was the teaching of Aristotle and the idea that we can know reality that started and ignited the Renaissance, that then led to the scientific revolution, then led to the political revolution in parallel. And then that led to America, who gave us some kind of an idea of what freedom can look like. And we're losing it today because America was not perfect. It was founded on a very shaky philosophical foundation, and the cracks in it are now widening. So we still have to do a lot of philosophical work and changes in order to establish or reestablish what the founding father had in mind of the vision for America. And the other thing you will notice is that you should never think about this problem in, I need to change the majority of the people around me. Until we have a majority of 50% and more, we cannot change the politics. It's not true. If you learn about political changes in history, they were created by a super minority. We're talking about individual, like a small organization of individuals that are very powerful, very influential, that started pushing a culture with feeding it over time with ideas. If it was, Nazi Germany, I'm finishing the book, The Ominous Parallels by Leonard Peikoff. I don't know if you read it. I highly recommend it. To really understand, people think that Nazi Germany is a result of politics. It's not. It's a result of decades and centuries, or a century and a half, I would say, of Immanuel Kant establishing a foundation, and then other philosophers like Hegel and others creating and molding a foundation on which a Nazi Germany can exist. So for the good and the bad, it's a philosophical problem, and it's dictated by a small minority of influential philosophers and opinion leaders who really affect the majority of the people. Most of the people around you are not interested or even capable, as far as they're concerned, to be any kind of intellectual innovators. They will follow whatever the culture will tell them is the right thing to do. And the question is, who's going to say what's the right thing to do? So one of the last things, again, of the points I want to make, it's not about the quantity. It's about the quality of who is speaking and who is talking. So you need to be the golden marble here on the right-hand side, and not the people on the left-hand side who just by the sheer power of majority take over. It's the quality that matters. So the question is, how do you create an influencer? How do you become one? So before you have an influencer, somebody has to educate them. Somebody has to train them. Somebody has to mentor them. Somebody has to challenge them over time. So I won't go into that, but what we're dealing a lot with the Ayn Rand Institute is how do you create influencers? How do you educate, first identify potential with the people who are interested in ideas. Then how good are they? And so how much potential do they show you, right? And then start educating them and training them and mentoring them and then challenging them over and over again so they become the best they can be. And there are many examples of people that came out of the Ayn Rand Institute and turned out to be great, thought leaders. She has this quote, Ayn Rand, in that essay that says, "Teach men the right philosophy and their own minds will do the rest." Philosophy is the wholesaler of human affairs. So I will just reiterate that when you're talking about what can one do, it should be about philosophy. It should be about a minority influencing a huge majority. So I won't avoid or evade the question of what can you do? At the end of the day, you're asking yourself, can I do something other than becoming a thought leader and a mega influencer, which you should if you are interested in that type of career. So the first thing I would do is research and learn philosophy. And here's a plug-in for our Objectivist Academic Center. If you're interested in that, both as a graded student who wants to make a career as an intellectual, but also if you're a professional like me who's just interested in learning more, it's a great opportunity to log in once a week and really learn as deep as possible about philosophy in general and about objectivism and its the proposed solutions by objectivism that it offers you. So research and learn and read as much as possible. Integrate everything and clarify things for you. So you get to the point where you can tell yourself, am I really clear about this answer? I didn't just read it somewhere and I'm reciting it. Do I really understand why that answer is the way it is, where it's coming from, what it is based on? Is it clear in my mind? Do I know how to then present it to someone else? And what do I do if somebody challenges me? Do I have the answers for that? So clarity is very important. You should do it for content, your ideas, your arguments, and so on. But you should also do that for your own personal goals and objectives. What are you trying to achieve? Maybe for me, it's changing or making sure that my kids know enough about it to then empower them for an independent life. Maybe that should be my goal, nothing more. Maybe my core family or my extended family, and that's it. That's my goal for me changing the culture. So be reasonable and clarify the goals for yourself. Be practical and practice objective thinking and communication. I can't tell you how beneficial a course by the name of Objective Communication is that the writing course in the OAC gives you. It goes through a whole process, step by step, of how to take something from an idea that you have, that you want to say something, you want to communicate something, to then go all the way through a very rigorous process of putting that on paper or in a script. So you're clear, you're making sense in the way you're making your points, and you validate all of your all of your statements. So another plugin for OAC if you're thinking about getting better at that. And the last thing you should know is that what Ayn Rand says in that essay is you should speak and you should write and you should impact the community around you, but to the level of your resources, the level of your interest. If you're a medical student, don't spend weeks and days and nights at the expense of maybe failing in your next test, arguing with people on Facebook or wherever. Focus on what's important to you. But if you decided that you want to be an intellectual, speak and write as much as you can. Maybe any individual can write to their politicians, write to their mayor, or anyone they can influence. And don't not speak if somebody's saying something wrong. Or in dinner with friends, what I do is it's like I disagree. If somebody says, "Oh yeah, you know how, this is awful. Those businesses are corrupting everything." It's like I disagree. I think businesses are the most moral thing in the world. I think the corruption is coming from a different place. And then I will wait and see if they're interested. Or are they just closing up and saying, "Oh, you're wrong," and they walk away? In which case, don't even bother talking to them. But if they're interested and they're like, "Tell me more about it," then I invest more of my time. So if it's a friend, if it's your class, if it's your society, if you want to be a politician, you choose the scale, but don't, make sure to speak up. Because you can never really tell when your words actually reach the right mind. I travel the world, I've met a lot of you, and I know that what our intellectuals are saying, what I'm saying, from time to time resonates with people, and I hear it recited back to me with people who are writing back. So just speak up, because again, you never know who you're impacting. Maybe the next prime minister or the president, who knows? But I think the most important thing is to be honest about your level of knowledge and understanding. Because a lot of people argue beyond, above their belly button, as we say. It's sometimes you should not engage in battles that you're not sure you can fight. So if you're not an expert in that, environmentalism, for let's say, or somebody brings up animal rights or abortion, very controversial issues that you really need a full understanding of. And if you're not ready or equipped, or you don't have the ammunition to go to that fight, don't. Be honest about the level of knowledge. And it leads me to the next one. It's very self-serving, but really consult and support people who do that for a living, because they're your agents. They're speaking for you. They're explaining things for you. They're writing books. They're doing essays. They're coming to events in Latin America and all over the world. And they're doing the heavy lifting. So I think the best thing you can do if you've decided that you don't want to be an intellectual, just be a professional, is add your value by supporting them, by saying, "Here, I want you to do more. I want you to write more. I want you to speak more. I want you to travel and talk to more people." They're really your heavy artillery, or the nuclear weapons, as Ayn Rand says, in the war of ideas. As they say in Mission Impossible, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is a big mission, but you should not see it as your duty to change the world or change any mind out there. It's not what you're supposed to be doing unless that's what you chose as your career, right? Are you getting paid to change minds? If so, choose to accept the mission. But if not, it's not your mission. Your mission is to become the doctor, the lawyer, the engineer, whatever it is that you want to do. That's your mission. And my last slide is just, your mission is to live. Your mission is to make your life the best it can be. And what can one do is a big question, and maybe the answer is not much, because it's not my business to change the culture. I have 50 years to live, 80 years to live, and that's it. I'm going to focus on making my life the best it can be with the given culture that is around me, because I cannot change it. I might be able to help other people try and change it. Maybe we'll see some progress. To give you the bad news, utopia will not happen in your lifetime. That's my evaluation. And the best we can hope for is some kind of a shift in our lifetime between what's happening right now, which is going downhill very fast, maybe to stopping it a little bit and offering alternatives and being more visible to the world with objectivism and Rand's ideas. But my concluding point to this talk is, go live, and don't bother yourself too much with fixing the world. The anxiety and the frustration that comes with it, it's not worth it. Because even if you dedicate your life to it, not a lot will happen unless you're really a phenomenal communicator like Ayn Rand and other people, Yaron Brook, who just do this for a living, and that's their passion, and that's their mission in life. So I think I'll stop here, and thank you for the time, and feel free to write to me if you have any specific questions or follow-up questions, or of course you can ask me right here and now.
Thank you very much, Tal, for your presentation. Very good advice for us. And I invite people to put their questions in the Q&A here in the screen. But I will start with, I have two questions for you to break the ice. One is, you were talking about that if you want to change the world, if you want to change ideas, it has not to be a sacrifice. You have to enjoy the process. So you came from the business world, and you were a very successful businessman. So why, this is more like a personal question, why did you decide to change the field? You were in the business company, now you're trying in some way to change the world, and you're in the philosophical world. How and why did you decide to do this change?
To be completely honest, I think that at the age of 18, I didn't have the tools to choose the right career for me. I think that my true career should have been in being potentially an intellectual and a man of ideas. But I did what everybody did around me, which is to say, let's get a safe job. Let's go into engineering, which was computer engineering, which was very safe. And everybody around me kind of pushed me to get a safe job, be a lawyer, be a doctor. And I actually chose something that was the hardest. You know, I thought it's going to be hard and challenging. And I did pretty good because, you know, it was interesting. But when I made enough money to just introspect for a second, it's like, what do I want to do with my life? This is more interesting to me. I truly will say it to every, and I said it to several people who offered me jobs, I'm not as interested in software anymore as I'm interested in philosophy. And so I know that my time is limited, and I would rather spend my time trying to change the world through ideas, or my motivation is not changing the world. My motivation is education. I enjoy speaking. I enjoy talking to people and seeing them, or their eyes light up. So what they do with it, maybe they become a prime minister and change the fate of a country, great. But I'm not interested in politics. I don't want to change the world from a political perspective. If you look at Iran, he's much more fiery about politics. I'm more interested in personal happiness, in leveraging philosophy for living a better life. And so my answer is that I made a mistake at 18. And I hope a lot of 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds are smarter than me by knowing that what they should be doing with their lives and their time is their passion, whatever interests them. And if it's philosophy, go all in, because there's money to be made in philosophy. I can make, you know, maybe even help you with that. So yeah, that's my answer. But I'm not regretting. You know, it allowed me to live the life I live and make the money I made, and maybe offer me the potential right now to do what I love doing.
Well, our goals always change. So the goals maybe that you have at 18 is not the same goals that you have at 40. So it's good to be open to change and to start pursuing our own interests, right? So
that's what I said.
Another question. Yeah, I agree. So, you know, Tal, you've been in Latin America, you've been in Argentina, last year in Brazil, and a couple of countries in South America and Central America. And you know that Latin America is based on this altruistic, collectivistic philosophy. So, and you're right, the politics and economics that we have are completely consequences of this vision that we have about morality and about philosophy. So what do you think is the best approach or the best arguments when you try to talk with the person? How would you approach to someone who are completely, who is completely embracing this, I don't know, very religious morality or very collectivist point of view that sacrifice is a good thing? So what do you think are the best arguments to try to break with these ideas? It's a hard question.
I wouldn't approach them. By that I mean that I would not approach someone and start talking to them. I would wait for them to approach me. And that is, I think, the most important tip I would give for someone, as far as, you know, just polemics, you know, arguing, just not debating professionally and so on. What I found is that if you talk to people, it's like, hey, I think you're wrong in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. they close, they walk away, they're offended, alienated, and you just lost your positioning as someone who's there to help them. You're just another person who wants to convince me of something, you know, like a cheap salesperson. So it's all about trust. If in the end of the day, you listen to the people you trust. So how do you build trust? First, I'm not leaning on anyone, telling them, oh, you should listen to me. It's like, who are you? Why should I listen to you? If I say something that interests you and you come to me with a question, great. You came to me. So first I would take the, how would you approach? Don't approach. If the question is, what would you say if somebody approached you? The first thing I would ask them is, why did you approach me? Because where I usually start is like, what's interesting to you? What's bothering you? Is it religion? Is it collectivism? Maybe you just want to fight me and it's like, what's the point, right? Because a lot of people just want to fight. And let them approach you and understand the motivation. Once you understand the motivation, then you can go into deeper phases of communication, which is really understanding their context. Because you should understand a person's mind is like a very complicated web of ideas, right? Their entire context is something they've built for decades or years. So, and this issue you're talking about, this tiny issue, is one tiny point in a humongous network of ideas. And the way people change their mind is that not you take that idea and you plug it out and you plant a new one. No, the whole network of ideas will go into a full-on state of anxiety if you did that. No, the way people change their mind is like, wow, this is wrong. Something around this area that I'm thinking about is wrong. This guy is offering me something better. What does that mean? Oh, it means that I need to think about this and this and this and that. What do I think about this? What do I think about that? What do I think? Only when they're ready to assume a new idea, then they can start accepting it. So the expectation that you will change somebody's mind with a good argument and then they're stuck. I see all those Ben Shapiro videos. Ben Shapiro destroys the left. If you really see what's happening on stage is that Ben Shapiro is very fast, very smart. So he's bombarding someone with a set of arguments and the other guy does like this. But 5 seconds later, what do? They retaliate, right? Ben Shapiro didn't change anyone's mind. He just aggravates everybody, right? So if you want to be an aggravator and just, fight with people, great. Don't expect any results, just more blood, right? But if you have an attitude of an educator, you really need to appreciate the sovereignty of one on their own mind and appreciate what it takes. Just reflect about you. What did you have to put in order to accept new ideas? For me, it took a decade of learning to slowly figure out that all of my moral upbringing is completely different. It was a slow process of changing things and accepting them and then suffering a little bit, going backwards, forwards, and so on. This is how people learn. There is a reason why you go to school for 12 years and not a semester, right? So I know it was a long answer, but that's how I approach it.
I like long answers, don't worry about it. Yeah. So we have a question from Mauricio here. He's saying, well, thank you very much, sir, for your clearance on the talk. How an individual can identify a receptive mind who wants to learn more to this disruptive philosophy and way of living, this lifestyle? How can we identify this kind of people?
That's a great question. From my experience, the people that are ready for it are people that are asking a lot of questions. They're asking more than saying. They are at the point where they say, I don't know. I don't know the answers, or I'm confused. And they're asking you to clarify things for them. Then they're ready, they're receptive. In the event we did in Argentina, I remember in one of the breakouts, in the coffee break, there was one girl who approached me and bombarded me with questions. One after the other and the other and the other and the other, including religion, including what she needs to do with her life. Like, it was clear to me that she is actually questioning a lot of answers that she thought she had. It's like, wait, but if there's no God, then what is this? And what do I do? And should I listen to my mom, or should I, so that is one. And I invested a lot of time and energy. On the other hand, there was another guy who approached me and he said, I think you're wrong about God. I think you're wrong about this, and I'm willing to fight you on it. It's like, okay, it's your choice. I didn't argue with him. I said, it's your choice. You can believe whatever. If we're not convincing you in this event that we're giving you better answers or more rational answers, it's your choice. It's fine. So for me, that's the difference between somebody who's ready to learn, receptive, versus someone who's pushing back and fighting back.
Yeah. So we need to expect the attitude of a child. Why, and why. That's the right attitude.
Yeah, because kids learn, right? Adults don't learn much. They just run on whatever they learned when they were kids, and they don't question that. That is the reason, by the way, it's so hard for people to change philosophies. Because you need to be a kid and a sponge.
Active mind, and not an open mind, but an active mind.
Exactly. And be willing to learn.
Yeah.
And as you become more programmed, questioning the core beliefs is like, why should I do it? It requires so much mental energy and psychological energy and issues. Like, let me be. When I talk to my friends, most of them is like, I don't want to engage at that level. You're too deep for me. And I don't ask myself those questions. I go to work, I do my thing. I got a lovely family. I make enough money. I do my hobbies. Leave me alone. Great. Leave them alone.
Tal, we have Nikos here from Europe. Hello, Nikos. And
all the way from Greece.
Yes, from Ayn Rand, Europe. Yes, and he's asking, those of us who fight the battle of ideas professionally, how do we measure success when the big noticeable change will probably happen in many decades, if ever?
It's a very complicated question, Nikos. Thank you very much. I cannot answer this question in 2 minutes, but I would say that I try to concretize for ARI real metrics that show change over time. For instance, I don't know if you know, but the graph of consumption of Objectivist courses on the mobile app that, by the way, is launching in Spanish very soon. So yes, it's going to be all in Spanish, not all of it, not all the courses there, but the majority and the most important ones, is growing dramatically. We're over 265,000 hours of consumption. Now, if you ask me I know if the world will change in 100 years, if we get to 1 million and then 10 million and then 100 million hours, something's moving, something's changing. There's a young kid somewhere, I don't know where, in India, in Malaysia, in Argentina, somewhere, who's listening, learning, sharpening their mind. Now, another thing is, it's like, this is kind of the top of the funnel, right? But we used to have, 10 people, 15 people in OAC, we have 100 now, right? That shows me that the world is changing. It's not dramatically changing, but slowly you take small steps, and over time, that's what happens. And then who knows, maybe one day we'll have another person who has the capacity of an Ayn Rand, and they write something so meaningful and current about what's happening today that people will listen. And, I don't know, man, 30 million people will read their book. So like I said, you never know what you're doing until it's done. It's not like business where you say, oh, I made $1 million. It's not that immediate. It's a long-term battle. But, Nikos, we're patient. We're fighting a big war. And I know you're dedicated to that. And that's what we need to do, to be patient and rigorous and not give up.
Thank you, Tal. Aure from Mexico is asking, in the face of an evidently deteriorating intellectual world, is it wise to redirect, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, your non-essential interest like your hobbies, to devote more effort to spread the right philosophy?
No, not unless it gives you more pleasure and purpose in life than doing your hobbies. The standard of what you should do with your time should be you, not anyone else. That's the true meaning of being a rational egoist. I go race my car on Saturdays, and I don't spend my weekends fighting even harder to change the world, because I get more pleasure by doing this than something else. And so should you. Now, if this is truly important to you, and you find philosophy super important and important, like it is to me, engage, come to the events, help Maria with the next Argentinian or Mexican or Guatemalan event that we're planning for next year. See how you can help, volunteer. You will enjoy that. And then you can ask yourself, would I enjoy more volunteering or helping out with an event or playing basketball? It might be that volunteering in the next Ayn Rand conference would be more enjoyable to you. It will be a higher value. This is when you decide to go invest your time. But in general, think about what is more pleasurable to you and what's more important to you. Of course, if there's imminent threats to your life, deal with them. But again, as I said, don't think about changing the world tomorrow, because it won't happen.
So let me tell the audience, it's very enjoyable to volunteer for organizing an Ayn Rand Con. So join me, please.
Yes. Well, maybe you want to say something that, you know, we wanted to have it in September, but with everything that's happening, we had to delay it. But we are planning to come to Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, potentially Guatemala, and many other places. I know I'm spilling some beans here, right? But we are planning to be there, and we're going to continue to travel and bring the best speakers to Latin America. So if you can help Maria organize either, you know, the Argentinian, Brazilian, maybe Guatemalan events that are going to be bigger events, but also satellite events in your home country, in your hometown. If you can organize a room and filled with people or students, we will come, we'll speak. So yeah, and that is, by the way, very enjoyable. I have to say, the first thing I did was like Maria mentioned, is set up the Ayn Rand Institute in Israel, or Ayn Rand Center in Israel. And that was very pleasurable, meaning just seeing how we can affect whoever we can affect, and seeing the first, I remember I sat in the first row, and the 16-year-old that won the Atlas Award, the Atlas Essay Award, gave a speech. I was crying of joy, because you know, we created something, and this wonderful kid who was telling the story about how reading Atlas, or I think, oh, sorry, it was the Fountainhead. He read the Fountainhead. It was the Fountainhead competition, while he was in a trip with his family for the first time in New York. So reading about architecture and seeing the skyscrapers all at the same time, and what it did to him, and how he kind of understood new things about the world, was so emotional to me. It was worthwhile, way more than anything else I could have spent my time on.
Yeah. Gerhard here is asking, there are people who immediately react negatively to objectivist ideas, and others who immediately react positively, or at least are open or are curious. Do you think there is a common denominator, epistemological, or some type of common context for those who react positively? Sorry.
That's a very deep question, because I find that both on the left and on the right, they're very, very smart people. And even in the objectivist movement that is not on the left, not on the right, they're very, very smart people. But there's a minority of people who are, in a way, not fully, I would say, chewing the ideas on their own. So I don't think that if you follow the right ideas is a guarantee that you're a good thinker. I think it's more an evaluation of, are you an independent thinker, or a second-hander, as Ayn Rand calls it. And if you ask me what differentiates people who are more intellectual on the, because I think you can have the right ideas or the wrong ideas and still be very smart. You can see, people who are super smart and are completely wrong. You can see it in the Silicon Valley. You can see it in other areas of philosophy. Well, so independent thinking, not trusting anyone, trusting yourself to chew on the ideas is a key thing in, I think, being a first-hand thinker. And there's something about thinking rationally and thinking in first principles that I find that guarantees that you'll be a better thinker. In engineering, Elon Musk always talks about how he figured out to reduce the cost of a missile from millions and millions of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars by thinking in first principles. It's like, why is everybody telling me that creating a missile or a rocket, sorry, not a missile, a rocket costs millions of dollars? Why? They're all accepting that. But I didn't believe anyone. I bought one, I took it apart. I looked at all the components of it, and I figured out that there's nothing here that is worth $1 million. So if you do that for ideas, it's like, why is everybody telling me that, helping the poor is noble? Wow, everybody says that. Oh, helping the poor people, great. Oh, you're so good. But I want to be an egoist and make as much money as I can with my software company. You're bad. Why? So if you have the mental capacity to question the majority around you and to be brave enough to say, I don't know if everybody, 99% of the scientists say that X, Y, Z. So what? Think about Galileo. 100% other than Galileo think that the world is flat, okay? So what? So independent thinking, I would say, is what differentiates good thinkers from bad thinkers, but it doesn't guarantee you the right ideas, because being both smart and getting the right ideas requires a very deep level of introspection and being honest with yourself and with reality, to say something doesn't add up here. So a lot of smart intellectuals evade a little bit or cut corners by saying, I don't know what's working, but that's what I think. And so they will write a book about it and defend it, even though they know deep inside that there's something that doesn't add up in their calculations, right? So.
Well, we have two more questions. Maximiliano is asking, how can we open the door for people to make questions, to be more curious? Is something that we can do to inspire them to be more curious?
You can teach young kids to be more inquisitive. You can change the school next to you to not be a school that indoctrinates people to think like ants, but to think like human beings. And unfortunately, the educational system produces today sheep or ants, not people, right? They're indoctrinated not to think for themselves, not to question authority, not to question the rules and the laws. You just be a good citizen and do as you're told and shut up and listen to the teacher. In my perfect world, a classroom would be a messy place. Very messy, very loud, kids talking to each other, questioning the teacher is engaging, trying to prove that their point makes more sense. They do their own research. There's a lot of quiet time where they do their own research, a lot of debate, a lot of questioning. But that's not how a classroom looks like. So that's where it all starts. Conformity.
Thank you, Tal. We have Elizabeth here saying what we should do when someone is telling you about her problems, for example, and asking for help, but she also tells you about her beliefs. But you know that those beliefs are the ones that are hurting her, and that's why she's so unhappy. So how do we say something and help this person without attacking her or hurting her?
Find a psychologist that you trust and send them to them. Really, I think it really requires a profession. If I, and it happened before, if I see a very troubled human being, where I see that they're having, after several discussions, you realize that their problem is much deeper than just on the surface ideas. They're carrying a lot of, you know, very deep ideas or premises that are wrong, maybe scars from the past, right? It's not your job, it's a job of a psychologist, but one that you trust. I think there are very, very few, unfortunately, that I trust. So I give them the number of the person that I trust. And that usually they come back to me and say, thank you so much, because they've helped me a lot. Now, if it's a friend and you have a lot of time to spend with them and you can go through that process, try to just point to say, look, I think there's a problem with a premise. Why do you think that you owe your mother your life? You know, who said that your mother should dictate your life and what you should be doing, for instance? Go think about it. But don't push too hard and don't make yourself a psychologist that you're not, right? So there should be a limit to how much intervention you should do with somebody's life, right? If you're not a professional.
Okay, I'm waiting for a question that Sir sent to me by email, but I don't have the question. Please do it here again, and I will ask to tell your question. I'm sorry about this. But I want to ask you about Sophie, Tal. You wrote a very beautiful book that I love and my sons love, called Sophie. And why did you write this book, and at what point of your life you decided to write this book?
Thank you so much. And by the way, the book is already translated to Spanish by a good friend of mine, and you know about that a little bit, Maria. So hopefully in the near future it will be available in Spanish. Maybe if I'll get some more volunteers, we can actually distribute a little bit to people who can proofread it some more. But so to your question, Sophie was something that was just burning in me after reading Atlas and reading The Fountainhead and reading about Ayn Rand's ideas, and I wanted to share it with my kids more than anyone, and I couldn't because you cannot have deep philosophical discussions with your kids. So I learned about the power of heroes, and I started writing short stories about this kid and this boy, Leo and Sophie. And before I knew it, I had like 12, 13 short stories, and I wrote them down. And then one day I made a big mistake, and I said, okay, let's put them all into one big story. And I thought, it's like, yeah, it's going to take me a month. It took me about 2 years. It's really hard. It's really hard to write a book. I learned a lot about, the process of creating something like that. But it's so enjoyable to get feedback from people about, reading the book and loving Sophie. And yeah, so it really came out, and I'm actually thinking about writing another one, which is bigger in scope. But again, my time doesn't allow for it right now. So it's on the shelf, but thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate it.
I think Sophie shows a very beautiful sense of life. So I recommend parents to read the book and buy it for the teenagers, because it's really beautiful. So we have the question. Sorry.
One more thing I would say is that I decided in the Spanish version to include a parent-child discussion guide. So at the end of the book, there's going to be a list, chapter by chapter, a list of questions that if a child and a parent read the book together, they can discuss things and really extract more value out of the book rather than just the story itself. So
that's very good. Activities for fathers and sons or daughters. So that's a good idea. So Edgardo is asking, he's originally from Israel too, and he's asking, how did you get involved with the Ayn Rand Institute?
I went to OCON, which is the Objectivist conference that happens every year in the United States. I went to, I think the first one was San Diego. And I just bought a ticket and flew. I didn't know what to expect. And honestly, I was overwhelmed with the amount of talent, the amount of smart people of a community that are just like me. And it was so great. It's like, I love, you know, origami, and suddenly I'm in an origami conference, right? Everybody around me likes origami. So people who love the same ideas, appreciate the same things, or experience the same challenges, you know, that I experienced. It was just great. And you know, I started getting more and more involved. I was helping create the Ayn Rand Center in Israel, and slowly became more involved to the point where I got to know Yaron, who was the previous CEO, the one before the last, and who's now the chairman of the board. And one day he called me up and offered me a job. I said no in the beginning, but about 2 years later, I came to my senses and said yes. So that's how I got involved. And yeah, took me time to realize that this is the best thing I could be doing.
And it shows that you're enjoying it very much. So
I smile all the time, right?
It shows. So we are on time now. Tal, do you have any advice for us? The last advice for Ayn Rand Center Latin America and for all the audience here?
My advice would be to use the artillery. I'm going to end with a sales pitch. If you help Maria organize a room full of people who are willing to listen to a very I would say, pushy talk about what life is about, what is philosophy about. And you know, if you know our speakers, if it's Yaron or Onkar or Ben or Ilan or Keith, Aaron, all of our leading intellectuals, Greg Salmieri, Tara Smith, Harry Binswanger, all the great people who can come and speak, we will bring them to you if you do your part, which is to organize a big enough audience that will make our time and our effort and our money worthwhile. So here's the agreement. You know, you organize the audience, you organize the place, we will bring the content. And so please help Maria as much as possible. What can one do? Do this. You know, it won't take too much of your time, and let us do the heavy lifting. Let us do the teaching, the education, sometimes the arguments, that might spark. In my case, I saw many times it sparks, let's say 5 people around you. And then those 5 people get together and then you do something bigger and you start a club, and then you know, spark 15 people in both in Latin America, in Argentina and in Brazil. I was just amazed to see the number of people in the community of people who call themselves objectivists. Like, how did it happen? It happened because people like Maria and other people were just propagating the ideas over time, and it happens. And if you organize yourself, then your voice becomes 10 times bigger. So yeah, you can do some things if you choose to. And if you wish to accept the mission, you know, you can wear a cape and fly as Superman.
Right. Well, we have objectivist clubs. Nixon is also starting a reading group and a discussion group. So you just have to contact me, and we will help you to open a reading club or a discussion club, or to help you to organize something in your cities. So Tal, this was a very inspiring talk. Thank you very much, and very helpful. So I hope you inspire people to help me too. So we start changing our life, and as a second step, our society step by step. One day, how do you say? One day, one mind at a time.
One mind at a time, yes.
Yeah. So
okay,
thank you very much.
Maria. Thank you so much for inviting me, and hope to see you soon again.
We will invite you soon again. So thank you very much. Nixon, thank you for your help, and see you all guys. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.